Yeah, I'm better. Yeah. Well, 'cause
I thought
I'm
it
coming
was good
from
during Western Civ, but then like halfway through Western Civ, it got cold.
I think it's gotten colder outside. I think it's dropped like.
Oh, yeah, it's very cold.
It's somewhere between 40 and 50,000 degrees below zero.
I could see my breath outside this morning, so that's how I knew it was cold.
Yeah, I think we've hit winter.
No. I don't think we've hit winter. I think it's
coming.
fall.
We've hit real fall.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, I'll go with you on that.
So we'll have fall for like 2 days, and then there'll be 5 feet of snow.
Okay, there was supposed to be snow on Sunday, and I got all hyped up, and then I remembered, wait, it's fall, I can't be hyped for snow yet, and then it didn't snow.
I think it's okay to snow after Halloween.
Yes. Snow after Halloween is fine.
September 1st is the day.
Wait, so November 1st.
Yep.
It's allowed to snow.
I struggle with my months sometimes.
I know.
What does that mean?
Okay.
January.
Okay, so a couple things in real. Ooh, I better change this.
I don't know. Wait, were you born in January?
So are we turning in the worksheets or just holding?
Yeah, we're gonna turn them in. I was just asking if you have any questions on it.
Still remember
I
that
mean,
you
I
were
missed
born in
like 4
December.
because I haven't watched that.
And I remember that it's.
What are your questions? Ask questions.
Okay.
Ask first.
Yeah, but I can't remember what.
Read it.
It
I don't have.
is.
Okay, so everyone, real quick, Aaron. So we're on question number 28, and so that veneer of civilization, and that idea that at any time people can go from being normal, average people to snapping and doing the most brutal and horrible things. That people you would never expect they could do that. And actually, it's really kind of shocking how people who just seem so normal can go. That's why I'm scared to go outside of this room. But actually, it could be anybody. And the thing about it is that instances that happen in there, and we're leading, and I'll talk a little bit about a thing called me lie, is that when you're under that much stress, constant stress, your brain can never shut down. Eventually, it almost rebels against you, rebels against your moral and your background. In World War I, they called it like a revolution in your mind, and you just go to do horrible things. There's all these pictures of World War I. You start seeing them. You don't see them in previous wars because they didn't have cameras. They go take these pictures of like men wearing necklaces made of ears because they cut them off and they kill. It's just like this weird desire for vengeance and to show that that you are on top and winning, and it's terrifying. But you see it in Vietnam, American soldiers doing it, and it was a thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, the person that President Trump pardoned, one of the things he did was cut off ears of people that he murdered.
How would they get the ear on a piece of string? How does that work?
Yeah.
Or
Poke a
like,
hole.
is it, or just that you're
So they just have like a hole puncher with them, just be like,
Take a
oh,
knife,
another
poke.
ear. If they just like carry extra string with them, they're like, oh, okay, another.
Well,
person.
they always have little bits of rope and things like that.
Let me get some more friendship for us. Like,
They don't really plan on making the necklace of ears, so they improvise.
okay.
So another one we didn't get.
29.
Yeah.
What's
your
Yeah.
Merrill belonged to Secret Air Force Squadron called Misty? What was the mission?
Oh, Misty was to knock out the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And they would knock out trucks and just fly along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Fly along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, knocking out trucks.
And then with that Ho Chi Minh Trail, many of the drivers were
Women. A lot of soldiers, snipers were women. A lot of snipers were women. Soldiers, and partially was so the men wouldn't want to look like cowards in front of women. All these little games, yeah. Another one.
Bob Harrison fled to the country of
Canada. Beautiful Canada. I know somebody who went to Canada during the war. This was a big deal when, under the Carter administration, they gave them amnesty, allowed them to come back. It was a big issue, let's say the election of 76. Any others? We good? So if you either turn it online, or if you have yours ready to go, put your name and I'll take it, or turn it online. Sound good? I hope you like that one. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Homefront and a couple things that happened, anti-war movement, and talk about the draft. But first off, we got to get to Me Live. And Me Live, right after TET. Teamwork. This is one we mentioned before. Nixon conspired to end the peace talks to keep the war going on and on and on. So this is from the video, so we need to write this down. So we already had this. So everyone know that don't forget, the Nixon conspired. I hate Nixon. This is why, this is the thing, the reason why I hate Nixon. There's lots of reasons I would argue to hate Nixon. But you know, he's gone. He died. Even though I was alive during this. That was a little weird when you remember that. It seemed like a long time ago, but since I was alive, it wasn't that long ago. And this is how the election turned out. Looks like a lot of states, but remember no one really lives here. You know, it's Montana with 4 electors. How many electors does Montana have now? And how many electors does each state have? It's based upon what?
Population without.
Kind of.
Isn't it like population but without the Native Americans or something?
You just like assign it randomly.
Hmm?
They like assign it like, oh, you get 4 this amount.
Okay, all of you, I guess we'll bring it back out of your memory through pain. Into the stocks. For members of Congress. So partially by Congress, how many members of Congress, how many members of the House does Montana have? It's time to know things, people. I should not be telling people who are old enough to vote. How many members of Congress? Should I? We have 1. I should not be telling people this. But wait, let me tell you how to vote then. If you don't know, won't you be easily manipulated? It's time to know things. How many members of the Senate? 2. 3 members of the House. 3 members of the Electoral College. If they wouldn't have cut off the census early, they basically partially quit counting. The Trump administration wanted to count at the beginning of October. They have to count everybody, citizen or not citizen. And Montana might have got another one. But I don't lose any chance. You have a question?
How many members of the House are there?
435.
So that means 335 electoral votes go around the states, right? 335, like.
335?
No, well, 430. Never mind. I'm trying to do math.
Math, tough. Are you thinking 535?
I don't know what I'm thinking.
How many people are in the electoral college?
Yeah.
538.
538.
435 members of the House, 100 members of the Senate, and then by constitutional amendment 71, they gave DC 3. So that's 538. So you need 270 to be elected president. You have to have a majority. Are big states or small states favored in this? Small states. Another one we should know. Why are small states? Because we have 2 senators. How many does California have?
Also 2.
So we're overrepresented per voter in Montana. We're way overrepresented. So, Nixon wins, butters Bob Hope. Let's get to Me Live. Because something happened, this actually happened just a few months after TET. In an area north of Saigon that the U.S. Army called Pinkville. And it was an area of a lot of Viet Cong action in the Delta, a lot of farmers, small villages, very dangerous. The Americol Division, it was literally called the Americol Division. The division has about 15,000 to 20,000 men. Basically, it goes to, you have like a squad of about 10, and then 3 squads make a platoon, 4 platoons make a company, next side is up is a battalion, then regiment, then division. And then corps, army group, army. You didn't know all that, but a division is, they don't do it as much now. Basically, the U.S. Army does it now more by brigades, which is about 8,000. Then it was about 15,000 men. And this was the worst division in the U.S. Army. It had the lowest discipline. I mean, every good commander who was in the American division, what was their number one goal? To get out. And so it was like, it was the place where they put all these people who didn't know anything, bad leaders, terrible morale, and they were put in one of the most dangerous areas. The reason why they were put there is because the harder fighting against North Vietnamese regulars was along the border with Cambodia and Laos, or by the DMZ. And so they're there, and they've had a number of run-ins where they had burnt down villages. These are all pictures from Pinkville. That's what the U.S. Army called it. And one of the villages is My Lai. So here's American soldiers with the cows here, burning down a village where they suspected the VC might be getting supplied there. These would be holding rice, so throwing the rice and destroying it, with the idea being that the rice would be used by the Viet Cong. And there have been a number of casualties, ambushes. Well, one company, under the command of a William Talley, I don't have that down, was going through My Lai. We'll come back to Cali. I thought I put it down. Well, on their way near the village of My Lai, they were ambushed. And one of their soldiers was captured and brutally killed. Brutally killed. I mean, knife wounds, body parts cut off, and left out for the soldiers to find. He was out, basically they sent out pickets or scouts out, and he never came back. And they found the body. And they've had a number of people that have been shot, ambushed, and you can imagine how discipline is low. They know that they're the bottom of the barrel, and then they just had a friend killed. And what do they want? They snapped. And this happened in other places too, but not to this scale. And by the way, these are endemic in this type of war. Absolutely endemic. So they went into these are some of the pictures from here. They went into the village, and this is My Lai. They burned parts down. Here they're forcing villagers off away, and they start lining them up upon these kind of dirt roads or dirt tracks near the rice paddy. Here they are lined up to be interrogated. And some, yeah.
Wait, so an American soldier was killed, a scout, and then they're taking them revenge for that.
Yeah. So they went to this village, just assume nearest village, the Viet Cong must be there. And they just wrapped everybody up. They must all be held. And, they have interpreters who kind of speak a little bit of Vietnamese, but their interpreter wasn't very good. It's a recipe for an absolute disaster. And this is right after Tet, so everyone's on edge. So this is actually before the Democratic Convention. This is right, in fact, it would have been right after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And what they did is, and this is where it gets gray, their commander said they were ordered, kill them all. And so when they pushed all the civilians away, men, women, and children, they were going to take some away for interrogation, and basically the young men just assumed they'd be a con, put them in the hellholes of South Vietnamese prisons. They lined everyone up and shot them. Mowed them down. Anywhere from 200 to 400 civilians were killed by American soldiers. And these are some of the pictures. There are more. This is as gruesome as I want to make this. I can find worse. But bodies lined up. Remember that little track I told you about? Lined up there. They would have killed more, but a helicopter pilot, Hugh Thompson, there he is right there. He had a little observation helicopter, and he was flying above, and he saw this, and landed his helicopter literally between American soldiers, furious, wanting revenge, and civilians who are running away. A lot of them did escape, but then he saved them. He would actually get in trouble because he wanted to shut them up. And these are some of the people who survived. This is supposedly after when the reporters were a year later, he had his finger shot off. During the massacre, he survived with his finger shot off. And they kept this secret for 6 months. This was kept secret all the way into 1969. And why we're mentioning it here is, when did it become public? Nixon was president. And so even though Nixon was not president, when you're president, you take the blame. They covered it up. I mean, they did a really good job. A couple intrepid reporters, they talked to Thompson. Yeah.
What year did this happen?
68, but it came out in 69. And here's the article it came out in. That's the picture I showed you. survivors. I mean, this is unreal. We knew stuff like this was happening, but this really hit home. What is the war doing to our country? We are the good guys, aren't we? Well, who was blamed? They picked the commander of the platoon, Lieutenant William Cowley, right here. Here's Cowley. And Cowley showed the problem with the Army. When the war began, to go to officers candidate school, to become an officer, to directly go to the officers candidate school, you had to have a college degree. By 1968, there were so short of people, all you had to do is go to college. And so he went to junior college and didn't do very well. But he had a year of junior college under his belt. They took him into officers candidate school. Shows you how desperate they were. But you can imagine how that's going to happen. And so you have this person who, maybe not qualified. Doesn't mean he wasn't smart. I mean, stuff happens. But he was stuck in the worst unit, and they blamed him. He said, it was my colonel who commanded the regiment, a bigger unit, orbiting above in a helicopter. And he said, this came from the top, aka the division commander, to shoot them all. Well, what did the colonel and then the commanding general say? We didn't make that decision. So they found a scapegoat. Maybe or maybe not, they gave the order, but he is going to be court-martialed and sentenced to life in prison. And this will become such a massive issue at the Homefront. Okay, like we said, what are we doing? What are we turning good people? And that's that veneer of civilization. Well, I'm glad you asked that question. These are just regular people. And what happened? They become mass murderers? Were they mass murderers before the war? I'm betting probably not. So what is happening to our country? What does war do to our young people? And what kind of country allows young people to become mass murderers? But at the same time, he became a symbol to those who thought we weren't doing enough to win the war. And there were people who started saying, we need the whole army of Lieutenant Cowleys. Cowley was a hero. We should kill them all and win the war. And this will become a divisive issue. Cowley's court-martial. Does anybody want to guess what side President Nixon will take? This side that we should really question about what we're doing as a country to make ourselves a better country, or we got to win the war and he's right. He's a hero. Nixon would pardon Cowley. He's still alive. Never gives interviews. He just sounds like this, just a wave. It's sad. Because his whole life will be surrounded by this. He already looks like he had aged up 30 years in that 1 month. And so here we have, look at this cartoon. Me, like Lynn, another thing. We're with Lieutenant Cowley. Well done, Lieutenant Cowley. While members of Congress are opposed to war thrown into a ditch. It's actually pretty amazing we have people cheering on somebody who was convicted of being a war criminal. I want you to ponder that for a second. You think things are divisive now? You get my point? You think things are divisive? And that was on an armored personnel carrier, Vietnam. Now, let's be clear. You know what they're doing? They're making a very dark joke to get it on camera. Yeah, we do what we want, but still, it's pretty horrific how that happened. Blood, sweat, and tears. Okay. So, Nixon's president on June 27, 1969. 242 people were killed in that week. And Life magazine put this magazine out. And it is one of the most amazing things I read. You know what a magazine is? That's an old person joke. Okay, so, you know what the magazines are. Life magazine was a big deal. Known for its photography. Now you only see Life magazines if you're waiting at a checkout stand. Life magazine, the greatest presidents, But they put up this with the picture of every young man who was killed in Vietnam for that week. And okay, you hear 242, and that's a lot, isn't it? But of course, we've had nearly 220,000 people die of COVID. Now it's just becoming almost like a number, which is terrifying. They turned it personal. They put every picture. How do you think Nixon felt? Fearless. As he saw a direct attack on him. Which, man, that's what we call it. Isn't that the definition of narcissism? But these are dead people. And it's, how dare you do that to me? Yeah, it's unreal. All those men died. No explanation. Some they couldn't get the pictures for. Some are high school yearbook pictures. Why we had the style of high schoolers in 1968, I mentioned this before, but outfits that we think of the 60s are actually 70s. The brightly colored and long hair. That's more of a 70s thing. Well, that's going to lead to the biggest anti-war protest of the entire war. This is going to happen in October 1969. Over 2 million people went out to march against the Vietnam War. 2 million people. They didn't go to work. They didn't go to school. They came out to protest this war. And it was a cross-section of people from all over the United States. As you can see here, we have all kinds of different people, different outfits, just as you would have today. Went out to protest the war. And once again, to the administration, this seemed like an absolute attack on his very own existence. So in October it was called, I forgot, in November it actually happened. October it's called, I had it in my head wrong. I love this picture of the balloons going on in Central Park. People were tired of the war. Here's in San Francisco, San Francisco. Washington, D.C. And so, Nixon is president, and Nixon wanted to come up with a way to not lose the war, but get America in a way out of the war, which his solution was to never leave. But this is where we get to the draft. He wanted to marginalize the anti-war movement, to make them appear like they're the traitors. That's the whole Lieutenant Cowley thing. To make them seem like they're the ones who are actually helping the enemy. They're the ones that are making it impossible for us to win the war. You discredit them, which he has been remarkably effective doing. He was so effective. And I've mentioned that, like the POW-MIA thing was a way to marginalize the anti-war movement. And now we have a road named after it. A very, as it turned out, clever political stunt by Hitler. Did I say Hitler? Boy, I really don't like Nixon. So we're going to jump right to this. The draft. The draft would go from draft boards to a lottery. Before 1969, drafts were done by a board. And you would get a draft card. And here they are protesting the war by burning their draft card. You get a draft card. And you would be eligible till you're 40, all young men. And the draft board in every town would get a quota. Twice a year they had to draft a certain number of people. And they would go through the list of people eligible to be drafted. And they would pick a number of people. Now normally you would think, okay, wouldn't you pick younger people? And they wanted younger people because they didn't have families. There would be less pressure to end the war. So you want 19-year-olds. Gee, I wonder why colleges were the centerpiece of anti-war protests. But 18-year-olds could volunteer, but 19-year-olds would be drafted. But they could draft people as old as 40. And they could arbitrarily draft people. You didn't have good political connections, you could be drafted. If you had friends in the draft board, they're all local politicians, you could get your son out. And who's the most famous person who was drafted just because they wanted to punish him? Muhammad Ali. There's Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion of the world. In Lexington, Kentucky, they didn't like him because he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. He was very outspoken. He was a fighter for equal rights. and also one of the best known Americans. And so he was 26 and they drafted him. He would become a conscientious objector and speak out against the war. They strip him of his title, would fight for 6 years. He'd come back and regain it, but in the process, literally get his brains knocked in terms of Parkinson's. But Muhammad Ali, and it was obviously unfair. So I asked you to take out that packet really quick. And then they switched that from a draft to a lottery. If you don't have your packet, Jubal, we really shouldn't look off somebody else's. This is such a bad thing. Thank you, COVID. By the way, did you hear that 90% of the hospital beds in Elizabeth County are filled? Wear your mask. It's really bad right now. I'm actually kind of nervous. I'm always kind of nervous about this, but I'm nervous. Just in time for us to go through a wind, to be too cold to go outside. So we're all packed inside even more.
Mine's on my laptop.
And so, everybody look at, find what number, my scroll number 6 on the bottom. First off, you look on top, there were ways you could get out of the draft. At first, you could get out of the draft if you went to college. So what happened to college enrollments? But, what kind of people can go to college? Yeah, upper middle class. You need a little bit of money, don't you? If you got married, at first you couldn't go. You weren't drafted. Then it was married with children. If you were in graduate school, even after they got rid of the college exemption, they got rid of that eventually. You could still be drafted. Or you could get out if you went to graduate school. If you had a health problem, so if you find a friendly doctor who would say that little mole you have is a cyst and you can't fight, or that you have bone spurs. I have bone spurs. So technically I could get out of the draft. They wouldn't take me, not only because, as you all well know, I'm too old, but I couldn't have joined anybody's on it. They couldn't have drafted me. I would have been out, but I bet you all would have been out.
I've already had to get surgery.
Me too. You?
I'm deaf.
What? See, I blew my knee out when I was 15. So, that's why I wouldn't have to go.
Same.
I couldn't. And so, those are away. But then, in 1969, they changed to a lottery. And what the lottery was, every birthday would get a number. And they literally went through this show where they had with 365 dates in here. And they would go 1, and they would pull this out. They would pull that out, and it'd be a birthday, whatever. What's number 1? What's number 1 on?
September 14th.
So September 14th, that's number 1. Pull the next birthday out, number 2. Next one, number 3. And so they give every birthday a number. And then they would go. And when you're right after, so they would draft twice a year. Twice a year they would do this, starting in 1969. And so if your birthday, when you turn 19, in the 6 months, or I'm sorry, if you turn, everyone who turned 19 in that year before the first draft call, you're eligible for the draft. And all birthdays get a number. So let's imagine you're all born in 1951. Find your number. Let's go 1951. Everyone find their number. And then they would say, okay, they figured approximately the same number of people would be born every day. And so if we need a certain number of soldiers, they would figure out how many soldiers we need. That means how many days. And say everybody under a certain date is drafted, everybody above isn't drafted. So it's relatively by chance. The more soldiers they need, the higher that number is. So, what numbers do we get? What number? 94? What number?
148.
You're probably pretty good. What number?
240.
You're not going to get drafted. In fact, you're going to go, woohoo! What number?
141.
Probably okay.
151.
Okay?
51.
You're going to be pretty close. What we had yesterday, someone in here was like 21 or something. And they would say, okay, everybody under 70, you're in. Everybody over, you're out. And that's how they would do it. By the way, they would give you a little bit of time. Because you might have to report for a couple weeks or a couple months. If you're on that number, that allows you to volunteer. Because if you volunteer, you can pick what you're going to be in. You're drafted, they pick for you. And they might make you a Marine. They start drafting you to the Marines. And the Marines, you're going to combat. I know a guy who was drafted by the Marines. I know another guy who was going to get drafted, and he said, I'm not going to go. He ended up being a crew chief for a helicopter. He was there anyways. So, a good friend of mine who taught here for years, he's since retired. He's subbed, but he's obviously not subbing now. He's in his 70s. But he told me one of his favorite stories. He was at the University of Montana. It's 1969. And how did you find out what number you were? You would gather around the television, and they would literally broadcast the numbers. They'd put them up by month on the screen. You can imagine all these guys watching this number. And in 69, at the beginning of the year, that was the highest number of U.S. soldiers in the war. So the assumption was that number is going to keep going up. We're going to need more men. As it turned out, it didn't happen that way. But they're all watching. And they all got a number. They're all sitting there waiting. And his number was like, I think 311. It came up. But they're watching, and the month came in, all flashed out, and just crowd, just pure silence. And you hear it from the front. Oh, shit. Guy was number one. I knew he was. I saw him around the dorms, and he was gone the next day. He has no idea if he volunteered, went home to say, well, I want to stick at home for a couple months before I go. Or, hello, Edmonton. I don't know. But that's how they figured this out. Do you see the advantage of that for President Nixon? Even though the law was passed, this whole time was all democratically controlled Congresses. By the Democratic President LBJ, that was his law. But it took effect when Nixon was there. It made the draft seem more fair. And if you guys, I think only one of you got drafted when I said by 70, right? Then the rest of you are like, we're fine, right? And your protest will be over. There's not really a chance they'll draft you again. Yeah.
So I'm reading this, like the thing above the table, and number 4, it says like you have a strong feeling that the Vietnam War is wrong. You feel like you cannot want to fight in it. Was that an actual thing you could use?
Yeah,
to
it's
get out of
conscientious
the war?
objector. But you had to prove it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's very difficult. Ali,
Yeah.
because Islam is he said, my conversion to Islam, to me Islam is a religion of peace, and therefore it goes against my religion.
So why did
And
you
there's a few
draft?
Christians that tried it, but a few that didn't. And sometimes they would say no, and there was a chance that if they said no, you could go to jail. In World War I, they tortured conscientious objectors. The U.S. did. People tried to be conscientious objectors.
I just got number 9. I hated it.
Yeah, how we made them do they
I
thumbed
work
them,
on a farm.
hanged them by their thumbs. I don't even think of how bad that would hurt. And any other? Oh, and so this, gives you ideas how you can get out. And if they thought you were, a way you get out would be if you had they mentioned in the video, if you had another brother that was there. If you were a homosexual, you could get out. Other mental illness, you could get out if they just thought you were crazy. A guy named Ted Nugent, who's become have a couple of rock and roll hits, who's a guitarist. And now he's kind of he's a guy who's on Fox News occasionally. He's kind of a celebrity for that. Only thing I've seen now is a big supporter of President Trump, but he got out of the draft. Anybody want to guess how he got out of it? He went to his physical. Anybody want to guess? For 8 straight days, he didn't bathe or use the bathroom and didn't change clothes. Oh, he still went, but he didn't use a bathroom. kept the same clothes on for 8 days. So I walked in and they said, "You're crazy." Do you get the image of what he looked like and smelled like? Yes. Okay.
Did like they still get lobotomies all this time if it
Yeah.
wasn't? Oh really? Sick.
Yeah, lobotomies were seen as a.
Aren't they like illegal now?
Technically.
That's
Technically.
Yeah, lobotomies were seen as a very normal way to deal with mental illness, especially for women, because women can be so hysterical.
Well, yeah, you know, obviously, force your wife to put in a lobotomy. She's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but that's actually what's done. Oh, they're women are so emotional, we'll make them more pliant.
You know, just take part of their brain out. Obviously.
Yeah, in
That's how I want to go.
John
Yeah.
Kennedy's,
Lobotomy.
one of John Kennedy's sisters had happened to
Really
her.
disappointed.
What was
She got a
that?
lobotomy.
Get a lobotomy when you get married.
Don't get a lobotomy. Yeah.
What about that thing about you said about homosexuals not being able to join?
Mhm.
So just
Why?
Why?
Yeah, that's
The idea would be that they're not real men, so they couldn't fight. And I'm just telling you what they said. You know, they believe that.
Yeah.
And they would bring down unit morale because they'd be trying to make
Oh, I
passes
see.
it all.
So
And-
wouldn't men just like, get, hey, can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a little bit so I don't have to
Oh,
go
sure. But it was
They
such
did
a
that?
stigma back then.
Oh.
And in fact, that's one of the reasons why, people who actually were, they were homosexuals were so scared to say it because it was such a stigma, and you might get the tar beaten out of you.
Yikes.
I mean, I don't show you my age, but yeah, that was, even when I was in high school, that was, which,
It's sad.
which is amazing in my lifetime. It's just in the years I've been teaching how much that has changed. It's just remarkable to me. And since someone who believes in liberty, it's been a very good thing, but it's remarkable, that change. Just remarkable.
Okay, wait.
If you go away.
I could still like go to the doctor and be like, give me a lobotomy, and they like give me a lobotomy. Like, say if I like.
Once again, technically,
If I
no.
like went to like a brain
But-
surgeon and-
But stuff like that can happen. But
So,
it's
like-
now, yeah, you can't go. I mean, they would bring like their husbands would bring their wife. She's out of control.
So like hypothetically speaking, I could like go get a lobotomy right now.
Yeah.
Not quite, but it would be very difficult to do. But yes, it could happen.
Okay.
Please don't say that Mr. Parcher is really encouraging us to get lobotomies.
I'll
We'll keep that
encourage you.
secret for when we start the cult.
We have to open up our minds.
And
Yeah, exactly. We're like
literally open up our minds.
Literally.
Don't get lobotomies. Kind of sounds attractive, though. At least wouldn't.
Like I wouldn't have to think anymore.
Yeah.
Put a big
It
sign
sounds
on
kinda
your door
great.
that says "Don't get lobotomy."
No, no, and cannibalism bad too. I'm so sick with that one too. So the big thing about it. Why are you thinking so much about lobotomy?
I just watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and
Oh yeah, good movie.
I've just been thinking about lobotomies
I
ever
have a
since
book
then.
that has so it's about plagues and stuff, and they have an entire chapter on lobotomies.
Yeah, I've been
It's
Okay,
so-
last thing though, they don't get to how, once this happened, this took pressure off of Nixon. I'm gonna do a couple things tomorrow, the test is gonna be on, so I'm gonna finish up the Nixon stuff tomorrow, so I'm gonna do this quick, I'll film it, I don't know how long I'll be. The draft thing is pretty interesting. Okay, so Mr. Chauncey, this whole thing is just, he is always constantly doing busy work. That's part of being an administrator, you got lots of paperwork. Tough gig. I hate the paperwork I have to do now, which is a lot. I can't even imagine what they have to do. But he had some good stories because he got a draft number. He was at Carroll College when the number came out. And so he likes to come down and tell a story, and he also got a chance for him to get out of the office. He won't be able to do it before the test. But if he all of a sudden in December says, I got a free day, he's coming down to talk about it. Would everybody be okay if it's on that day? And the other thing is too, I'm trying to set up Vietnam War music so he can be here too. Because he loves the music. And he always likes to come down and listen to the music. And I'm always trying to get him to do it. But he just doesn't know. Because he really knows the music. But I will do, I'll just take a day, just Vietnam War music. I might do like 2 days.
Should do a tribute or something.
Let's just start a
Huh?
band.
Should do like a tribute.